Hello everyone, this is Direwolf20 and welcome to episode 66 of Direwolf20's Let's Play series. Last episode, we improved our wisp spawner and we've now got a pretty serious spawning ability for wisps. There's only one problem. Yoink. It requires 1500 RF per spawner. We've got 4 spawners in total. That means 6,000 RF per tick, a huge amount of RF. Not cool. So we are going to have to come up with a way to generate a large amount of RF, somewhere around 6,000-ish, and I'd like to have this room have its own dedicated power source. So everything else can still run off the main base's power, so all this stuff can still do what it was doing, but this room by itself, dedicated power source. That's what I'm going to go for this episode. Now, ideally, I should be able to manage this because I've come up with a design for something called a big reactor. Dun, 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 dun. So Big Reactors is a pretty cool mod. It adds a multi-block reactor system, which runs off of a fuel source called yellorium. We've been finding it in the world, and you guys have seen it in my A system, I'm sure. This stuff is pretty cool. What I like about Big Reactors is that, once you get into more of the late game of a Let's Play series or just playing in your own world or whatever you're doing, as you get closer and closer to the late game, you start needing more and more power, obviously. Some things require huge and ridiculous amounts of power, and eventually you just start making more and more compression dynamos or more and more magmatic dynamos or just more and more of different reactors or just simple blocks, right? I mean, there's of course the generators from extra utilities, and you might start diving into things like the 8x generator, which just consumes fuel 8 times as fast and burns it up 8 times as fast. That's all well and good, but building a big multi-block structure with lots of different options and lots of different mechanics and being able to, play around with some complicated maths just to get it the exact kind of thing you want, a lot more fun in my opinion. So that's why I'm excited to start with Big Reactors, and I think this is a good point to start it because I need 6,000 RF per tick, which is a pretty large number. Not entirely sure what I'm making over here, but it's probably something big. Let's see, if we popped over here, I know I'm making, what is this guy doing, 320 per tick, right? So that's 64, 128, and then 64 more, so 196, right? So, 1,960 RF per tick just from the compression dynamos. So I need about 3 times what I'm doing over here, and that's not even counting this a little bit, another 160 here, but I need about 3 times what I'm doing just for this thing. So let's get started with Big Reactors. So to get started with Big Reactors, we're going to need to craft a few things. Now there's actually 2 types of reactors we can make. We're going to make the first generation, which is just the simple burn fuel, get power type of reactor. Later, we might dive into burn fuel, turn it into steam, use steam to generate power type of reactor. But we'll get to that later on in the series probably. For now, we're going to need a reactor casing. This is going to go on the outside of the reactor. We're also going to need reactor glass because it looks cool. We're going to need reactor control rods. We're going to need reactor power taps. We're going to need reactor access port. You'll notice that typically this stuff all, for the most part, just requires a simple amount of items called a reactor casing. So that's the main basic foundation, and that's what we're also going to build our reactor out of. This needs yellorium ingots, which we should have, and graphite bars. Graphite bars are not hard to make, luckily. It's simply charcoal or coal in a furnace. So just smelt yourself some charcoal or coal. You can see we have a ton of coal. So I'm just going to go drop this guy into this old furnace right here, furnace mode only, boom, 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 and this thing will start cooking up and get me a bunch of graphite bars. Once those 3 stacks of coal are smelted, I'm going to come back, do a small amount of crafting, but what I should probably do ahead of time is start digging into my blue bag and find my hammer. Cool. We're going to need to clear out an area of space for this reactor to live in. So let's, do I want to just go straight down here and build it right underneath this reactor area? This might not be a terrible idea what I've got here. Let's see, where am I at with this? So right here is where my power source needs to be. So maybe I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm not going to say low on Certus, but I need more Certus. It's on my to-do list to upgrade my... Maybe one of the things I'll do next is upgrade my mining system. Because it's working, but, I need something faster, better, stronger. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, we might build over here. So let's snag some smooth stone. Stone bricks. Why not? Let's do... Oh, you know what maybe I'll even do is I'll go a little extra fancy. Let's do this. Let's put away the Tyrian. I don't think I need you guys for the time being. I'm not going to need this stuff. But what I will want is my chisel. So anything fancy and chiseled, that'll just make it look kind of cool. And maybe we'll go with something a little bit fancier when we build like a proper generator room. But for now, this is really just going to be kind of a compact little generator here. By the way, you'll notice that I've got Chisel 2.0, which is pretty awesome. Ooh, large ornate stone bricks. How do these look? These look neat? Yeah, I like that. Let's convert these guys all. Large ornate stone bricks. My favorite part is I can shift click into the interface. Yay. Alright guys, so our graphite bars are done, which means we can start crafting. And I've also completed construction of the room, which I'll show you in a minute. So let's make just a stack of these. I mean, that's a pretty good jumping off point. And we'll see how that works out for us once we get going. So let's, not quite nighttime yet. So you'll notice I've got this nifty little room laid out here that's all kind of ready to run with a reactor in it. You can see I've even kind of mapped out what size I want. I want the outer area to be 5 by 5. Now the smallest you can have for a reactor is 3 by 3 by 3. And it can get much, 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 much larger from there. That's why it's called big reactors. What I'm going with is a 5 by 5 on the ground, which turns out to be a 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2, 3 interior space, and the interior height's going to be 4. So I think overall that means a total height of 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cool. So that's what we're going to have here. I'm going to go ahead and replace one of these blocks with this guy, and I don't know if there's a tile entity or not, but we're going to try and see if we can't. Okay, yeah, no, that's not going to work. I can't do that. Darn. I was really hoping I could, but no such luck. It is a tile entity, so I can't want to equal trade that thing. So I'll be back in just a minute once I've manually filled this whole area in with these types of blocks. Alright, so I went ahead and made some reactor glass, which is nice and conveniently made with just reactor casing and glass. So that's cool. The other things we're going to need at least one reactor controller. Done. We're also going to need some control rods. These are where your fuel is going to go. So we're actually going to need, for my design, now the number of fuel rods you have determines how much energy you can create, basically. So we're going to want 5 of these in total. That's what I've decided to go with. We're also probably going to need a few more reactor casings. So we've got the fuel rods. We're going to want some yellorium fuel rods too. So we've got the control rods. We also want some fuel rods. Now these have to go underneath the reactor control rods all the way down the length of the reactors. Remember I said it's 4 inside. We got 5 control rods, so we're going to want about 20 of these guys. Cool. And we're going to need some more graphite. Cool. So let's get that cooking. And while that's going, I'm going to see what I can craft without graphite for a minute, because we're going to need a few more of these control rods. What else are we going to need? So we've got the one reactor controller, the fuel rods. I'm going to want a power tap. This is an important device because it's where you get your power out of, and a reactor that you can't pull power out of is kind of useless. We're also going to want a piston. So let's craft up, I don't know, like 10 of those. And we're going to want the reactor access port. Yeah, that's definitely going to be an important component of this build. That's where you put your fuel into. And then finally, I'm going to want a redstone port. This is a very basic component, but it's going to also be important. So we'll get that going. And by now, I should have a decent number of graphite, which will allow me to craft 10 more of these. And just a couple more of the reactor casings should be good. And now I should have everything I need to get this reactor up and running. So let's go downstairs and see what's up. So we're going to pop down here. And I might put glass around this room or something and just change it up a little bit. I mean, it's going to be different, but this is just the basic layout of the room. So reactor control rods is where your fuel actually goes. And the way I'm going to place this is kind of like in a crossbar pattern here. So 1, 2. From the bottom, they look the same, but I assure you from the top, you can tell the difference. We'll take a look at that in a minute. In fact, let's pop up there real quick. So you can see that's... All right, pro tip, don't right-click on the reactor control port when the reactor isn't up and running yet, because that will crash your client. as I just learned. So anyway, underneath the reactor control rods, is where we want to put the yellorium fuel rods. This is where the fuel actually sits. And when we insert the fuel into the reactor, that's where it's going to show up. So you'll see it there in a bit. We're going to place these guys. Say they have to go all the way from the reactor control port rod thing all the way down to the floor. Cool. So that looks pretty good. I want to have a reactor power tap. This is where power is going to get pulled out from. And since my power is going to go straight up here somewhere, in this general area, I believe, somewhere around here, I might just have the control tap up top, but I was actually also thinking about having a little capacitor in this room, so maybe I'll put the reactor control tap or power tap right here. So that's where you're going to connect your power connections, so like your energy conduits coming out of it. We're also going to want this guy, the reactor access port. Maybe that would be a good thing to place right up there. That's where you're going to put your yellorium fuel ingots. And you're going to go ahead and put that right in that slot, and it'll go into the reactor. So that might be a good spot for that. And then maybe right on the outside here is where I'm going to place my controller. And then finally, I'm going to have my reactor redstone port. I'm going to place that guy right there. That looks pretty cool. Now, for the remainder of this outer edge, you're going to want to go ahead and cover it with glass. One of the cool things also, by the way, if you're ever wondering why your reactor is not forming, if you right-click, it'll go ahead and tell you what's wrong with the block. So right-click with an empty hand, and it'll tell you why your multi-block is not done or what it's missing, that kind of thing. Like if it doesn't have a controller, it'll tell you as such, and that kind of neat stuff. So this should form a multi-block reactor once we're done with it, but there is one or two more things I'm going to want to get and do before we call this a completed build. There we go. So we should have a reactor ready to run. Nice! That looks good. So let's go get a couple things. I would like to keep this thing cool. So one of the things the reactor does is produce a lot of heat, and that heat equates into energy. But if that heat is lost and not focused, it's going to waste some of that energy. So there's lots of things you can do. I mean, a lot that you can do to keep this thing cooled off. One of the better resources is liquid ender. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and get some buckets of liquid ender. You can also use gelid cryothium. You can use gold and diamond blocks. So if you look more into big reactors, you'll see a long list of things that you can go ahead and use to keep your reactor at a decent temperature. So that's going to be that. We're definitely also going to want, while this is cooking up, some conduits. And I taught my AE system how to make these energy conduits, or so I thought. Didn't I? No, not yet. I was about to. Encode pattern. And interface for the molecular assembler. I'm going to need another interface for that thing soon, but for now I can go ahead and make myself some conduits. So let's get like 20 of them. That should be good, right? Yeah. We'll start that off. That'll take a few minutes to craft. While that's going, I'm also going to want a power monitor. And let's see, power monitor. There it is. Cool. So we're definitely going to want a machine chassis. Did I ever teach this thing how to make electrical steel? I'm kind of hoping that I did. Yes, I did. Cool. Let's request 10 of it. And while we're at it, actually, that's pretty much all I need. Yeah. Okay, cool. That'll cook up, and we'll run over here and grab from our fluid transposer the last of this stuff. Awesome. And away we go. Downstairs. Like I said, I might put like glass around this room so you can kind of see it a little bit better. I think that would be cool, right? Like the outer, like maybe this wall and this wall could be just a clear glass type, like thickened glass. But we'll get to that. For now, let's fill in where we want to put this. So your plan should be to put a bucket of resonant ender all around your fuel rods anywhere there's open space. So if I put that there, for example, that'll run down and be cool. Remember, resonant ender, if you touch it, it will teleport you to a random location in the world. Not too far usually, but not something you want to touch if you can avoid. It's not going to kill you, but it will teleport you around. So that's cool. So Resonant Ender's running down. We'll continue to do this. And we'll build some bigger and crazier reactors as the series goes on, I'm sure, because this will wind up being pretty much our endgame power source for a lot of our base. But for now, oil's working, so that's cool. So let's clean up our inventory a little bit. We don't need much else anymore, but we do want some Yellorium. So let's get a couple stacks of this. You know what else? You know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to do an export bus. Let's craft that. Start. We'll grab an acceleration card too, since we have one hanging around. So that export bus might be ready. There it is. Cool, not too bad. Snag some cables. So what I'm thinking we should do is also snag some Yellorium, because this will be a little bit slow, and this thing's actually going to need like 2 stacks worth, or at least a stack and a half to get started. But let's see if it starts. We're going to put the export bus here. We'll say Yellorium. We'll throw an acceleration card into it, and we'll run this thing down, just because it happens to be right there. Sweet. And that should start exporting Yellorium into the reactor. Yes, we can see it. Look, the Yellorium is filling up the reactor. Nice. So we can see core fuel status. Currently 20% full, 30% full, 40% full. It's slowly filling up the reactor with fuel. So actually I don't even need these 2 stacks. We'll leave them there. That will keep our reactor full of fuel all the time. The more full of fuel the reactor is, the more energy it produces and the more efficient it is, because the fuel getting hot is basically what creates your power for you. Nice. So this is your fuel status, how much fuel is in there. This is the temperature of the outer casing and the core. And you can see some details about it. Basically I think the core heat is what determines your power level. And by having the liquid ender in there, it makes the core more hot than the casing and keeps them balanced, as opposed to the casing leaking out a lot of heat. And this is your energy buffer. So when we turn on the reactor, we'll go ahead and activate it now. This energy buffer will start to fill up. And you'll notice that it's telling you on your interface here how much energy you're producing. Note that I happen to create a reactor design that produces just above 6,000 RF per tick. Sweet. It tells you how much fuel we're using in millibuckets per tick, and it tells you right here the fuel reactivity. So that's pretty cool. You also get your core temperature and a bunch of other cool stats. I'm going to turn off the reactor for the time being, because I don't want it running right now. And you'll see that even though the reactor has stopped running and we're no longer using any fuel, that while this is cooling down, remember I said it's heat that generates energy, right? So as it's cooling down, it's going ahead and still producing energy until it's completely cooled off. So I'll be back in a minute here when I'm ready to do the next part of this build, which is going to be an energy buffer, so some kind of capacitor, hooking up the energy to the spawners, and then also an auto shutoff so that this reactor doesn't run when we don't need it to. So guys, typically I've been using Thermal Expansion's power storage capacity. I want to go ahead and use Ender IOs for this one, and you'll see why in a minute. Because Ender IOs interacts pretty nicely with its built-in power monitor. So I just crafted 4 double-layer capacitors. There's a couple different types of capacitor. Let's see, these are the old ones. So there is the basic capacitor, which stores 1 million. The mid-tier capacitor bank, which stores 5 million, and then the vibrant capacitor bank, which is expensive, but it stores 25 million RF, so that's pretty cool. We're going to go the mid-tier one, go the 5 million RF. I think that should be sufficient amounts of RF, and you can see it's already starting to charge with my wireless charger in here, so let's sneak outside, and that should stop happening pretty soon. Yeah. So into here is where we're going to go. And what I'm thinking is we'll have the capacitor bank in the corner of this room. Okay, we will hook up using a strong energy conduit. Remember the middle tier energy conduits from Ender IO can only transfer 5,000 RF a tick. And this thing is producing 6. So we want to make sure to use the top tier energy conduit here. And there we go. This thing should start filling up. You'll notice that it's transferring a lot of RF a tick right now. That's good. Oh, you know what? This thing can only accept 5,000 RF a tick. So we might actually want to make 2 of these. Because I don't want to go with the top tier. Let's produce 1 more of these too. We're going to need that. So this thing can only accept 5,000 RF a tick, which isn't the end of the world. You can see it's almost finished the energy buffer here. So this guy is currently doing pretty good. I'm going to get a second one here. That should be cool. And this is the redstone port that I'll show you how to use in a minute. Let's fly back and make another capacitor. This is going to take a minute to craft these double layer capacitors, so I'll be right back. Alright, so another capacitor bank down, and if we come downstairs here again, once again it's recharging wirelessly, but that's okay. Come down here. Nice thing about this, it's a multi-block structure. So now it can store a total of 10 million RF, and it has an input-output of 10,000 RF. Cool. And you'll see we're right about here. What I'm going to do is configure a power monitor onto this thing. So what I'm going to do is probably put the power monitor right over here. And, or no, you know what? I want it actually... Let's say... I'm not sure if I can tap this thing right onto here or not. I don't think so, but if I put this connector on there like that, now it can read. So you can see that the power monitor here can read the capacitor bank storage and the machine buffer, so it does have to be connected with a cable. Just putting it next to the capacitor bank doesn't work. But somewhere on the cable line to the power monitor, and what I'm going to do is configure engine control, emit a redstone signal when storage is less than 75%, and stop when you get to about, well actually let's do less than 50, and stop at 75. That should be fine. Cool. And I'm going to use this redstone conduit right here. But first I want to configure the redstone's reactor port. I'm going to say that when you receive a redstone signal, we want to control the reactor being on or off. You can control other stuff, like all kinds of other stuff, right? You can have it output redstone signals based on conditions, or when redstone signals come into this thing, do certain things. We're going to set, there's two options with input, either set it from the signal, meaning redstone on equals reactor on, redstone off equals reactor off, or toggle on pulse. So when you receive a redstone signal, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, every time the redstone signal pulses. But we want to set from signal. This way, when it's receiving a redstone signal, the reactor turns on. We're going to commit this setting, so that means we're going to toggle the reactor on when we're receiving a redstone signal, and all we got to do is place that down. You'll notice now that the reactor should be running. Nice. So energy is being produced at a rate of about 6,000 RF per tick. And if we come over here to this guy, you can see that he's quickly climbing up. Now when we get to about 70%, otherwise known as 7 million RF per tick, this thing should turn off because that's what we've configured this. Oh, 75, that's what I made it. All right, so 7.5 million RF is the point at which we'll be halfway there. So we'll see here, it should pulse to 75, and as soon as that happens, the reactor is now off. You'll notice that there's still some core heat going on in there, so the energy buffer is going to slowly drip, but that's okay. The reactor will turn off, and this thing will stop right around 8 million RF, or 800 RF a tick. Cool, it's down, yeah, so 8 million, and it's slowly dropping, looking good. So yeah, we've got power now. So all we have to do at this point is configure this to go somewhere, and I want to hook it into the power line for, you guessed it, my system. So let's go find ourselves some stuff. I'm going to go into bat mode here. There we go. So let's get this power line going up into here. And we're going to need to use the green line, remember, because we need more than 5,000 RF per tick going into this system. So let's first go into power only mode so that we don't mess with anything else. So we'll unhook your 4 from power here. There we go. We're going, whoa, what happened there? All right, it's another one of those weird bugs where it just says you died. I don't know if that's a morph bug or what that's all about, but it's definitely weird. Let's get some more of these enhanced energy conduits real quick. It's just lying about me dying. But what's weird is like my character's animation is kind of dead. Like it's, I don't know what's going on, it's strange. But anyway. So we will run power down here, so we don't need this piece anymore. This will keep the grinder running on that power line, and then we can go ahead and put power into these guys from the reactor. So technically I don't really need this there. There we go. And good to go. Sweet. So these guys should be getting their power from the reactor now. So let's see what happens if we decide to turn this thing on. And we're going to want an exit here. Oh, it looks like it's nighttime. I'll be back in a minute when we're ready to do the next part. Alright, so final stage of this plan. We're going to flip these guys on. They'll start using up 6,000 RF a tick, right? If we come down here, we should see this guy draining energy. Cool. Yeah, look, we're using 6,001 RF per tick. Note that the power monitor requires about 1 RF per tick to maintain its running speed, so we can see it's quickly draining here. But that's not a problem, because as soon as we get below 50%, which is the threshold we set, it should kick on the reactor, which should happen any moment now. Let's see. Yes, reactor just kicked on, and you can see it's going to maintain that 6,000 RF per tick that it needs to keep things running upstairs. So we've now separated our spawner from the main power supply. No longer are we using our main power to power this thing. It's on its own dedicated reactor. Cool, huh? All right, we'll be right back. Okay, guys, we are back, and you'll notice that things are definitely a little bit more stable than they were throughout most of this video. I apologize for that. I noticed some minor tick rate problems, but I didn't think it was that bad until I was really looking at the numbers moving on here, and I noticed they were jumping all over the place and stuttery. I found a bug in the Direwolf 20 pack. Like I said, I'm beta testing the latest version, 1.2.1, and found a bug. Looks like wither skeletons can sometimes accumulate in the nether in very large proportions. So if you're beta testing the 1.21 pack, keep an eye on that. If your world seems laggy, check the nether for a large number of wither skeletons. That might be the issue. But anyway, we're back now, and things are fixed because I killed them all. I did have to jump into creative mode to test a few things just to figure out what was causing the lag. So just in case you noticed me in creative mode in the chat message there, that's why I had to do some things to clean that up. But anyway, now that we are cruising, I'm really excited. So we should be spawning a huge number of these wisps and producing lots of nifty stuff. It looks like we're doing a pretty good job. And if we head downstairs into our basement, we'll notice that we're no longer draining energy. So we've got our own dedicated reactor for that wisp thing. So that thing is nice and stable. Everybody's happy over here. Let's pop over to the Thaumcraft room for a minute and check on this stuff. Awesome. Everything looks like it's behaving properly in there. I like it. So I'm not sure if we need to refill any jars, but we can try it. Alright, I should probably... Can I hit refill all, or is that going to crash all of a sudden? Alright, I had to figure out... Like I said, there's still some kinks to work out in that computer craft program, but I'll give you the latest paste bin once I've fixed whatever that crash is and a couple other things. But I'm pretty excited about the big reactors build. I think it turned out great. And it looks like these guys aren't escaping, which is good. I should keep an eye on this reactor room. Speaking of, I did want to make this room a little bit more visible from the outside, so let's try something real quick. I'm going to grab some thickened glass. Which is going to require some sandy glass, which I should be able to make a decent amount of. Awesome. And we'll be back in a minute once this cooks up. So here goes nothing. Let's do this and that. See, that looks pretty cool. So you can kind of see it. That's nice. I like that. Yeah, I'm going to keep it that way. So this thing's still doing its thing, right? Producing power, right? So currently producing about 180 RF per tick above what's being drained, which is the 6,000. That's fine. This thing's doing its good job. And the only thing this might do that we want to keep an eye on is it will occasionally start exporting cyanite ingots. So this is the used up fuel source. So every time it burns through simulorium, it exports cyanite. I might want to add an implementation here to get that drained out of there, but we'll handle that maybe, well, I guess I could do it now. Shouldn't be too big a deal. Just going to pop over here real quick, and then we'll create an import bus to suck it into the aid system. Sound like a plan? So import bus, get that crafting. Ooh, we need some more gold processors. We'll start these cooking for a minute. And let's get reactor coolant port. No, we want another reactor access port is basically what we want. You should be almost done here. Cool. Get the import bus cooking, and while that goes, I'm going to go do this. We're going to want our wrench. So right now, this thing is set to do both, but we're going to have an export port specifically dedicated to this. So if I break this, the reactor stops. That's okay. Ah, see? Got teleported randomly. Told you not to let that liquid hit you. But it's cool stuff, so you can't complain too much. But if I hit this with a wrench, you'll notice it's into output mode. So this guy, we're going to say inlet mode. This guy should be on outlet mode, so that's cool. So now any exported stuff should go here first, and then I'm just going to put the import bus here. So let's see, import bus should be done crafting, and cable, we only need one. So let's give this a minute to burn through its fuel. It should, okay, it's not online at the moment, but once, oh, probably because I broke it midstream. Let's activate. There we go. Cool. There we go. So if I hook this import bus in here, we can just test this real quick. And it should have pulled this cyanide ingot out, in theory. Maybe what I should do is have an ME interface there. It sounds like it'll automatically output, so an ME interface should work. Unless, of course, this thing doesn't have channels available. Device missing channel. Well, there's your problem. Alright, so I don't have a channel available for it. Alright, I'll handle that somewhere else. Somehow. But for now, I think we're good. So I'm going to call this big old reactor a completed build. It's working pretty well. Might need to get another device channel on there just to make things happy and behaving a little bit, but we'll sort that out probably either off camera or next episode. But for now, like you said, plenty of these guys. I just want to turn this off for a minute and see if there's any. So I don't hear anything. Oh, yeah, I do. Just want to look around and see where one might be hiding. Let's go like this. Aha, there's a couple of hiders. Bat mode, engage. Ah, I see where they're going. I want to try my best not to have these guys hiding down here ever. So much junk in my inventory. Put things away, please. I don't want to get rid of that Tyrian. So just make sure to cover everything up. But for now, I think it's time to wrap up the episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed checking out the Big Reactors build. Like I said, it's a cool mod for generating large amounts of power, which, you know, when you get to this stage in the game, sometimes you need. All right, guys, Direwolf20 signing off, and take it easy.